Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of the Nilwere. It's the debut novel from author Tim Boiteau. And, thanks to you guys, we've got excerpts, we've got reviews, we even have an interview with Boiteau himself.
Always a plus, right?
Oh, for sure. So, listeners, if you're not familiar with the Nilwere yet, get ready for, well, it's a unique blend. Think historical frontier, but with a good dose of Gothic horror woven in. And at its core, it's exploring some really thought-provoking themes of identity and power.
Yeah, and dark fantasy is having a moment right now, but even so, the Nilwere stands out. The buzz is definitely building around this one for good reason. Baito's crafted this incredibly rich world. It's full of these unsettling mysteries, but with a protagonist that you just find yourself rooting for from the get-go.
Okay, so let's paint a picture of this world for our listeners. We're talking about Claremont. It's a post-revolution society. They're still dealing with the after effects, the fallout from a massive upheaval, almost like imagine a distorted American frontier, you know. But what makes it really unique is this concept of the family. It dictates your job, your loyalties, pretty much every aspect of your life in Claremont.
And that's where I think the Gothic horror element really starts to take hold. See, we're introduced to Claremont through the lens of Canton. It's this tiny hamlet, almost mundane, but there's this creeping dread that hangs over everything. You can just feel it.
Right, it's palpable.
And the surrounding wilderness,
Yeah.
it's not just vast and untamed. This is where the Nilwere is said to lurk, shrouded in all this chilling folklore, whispered rumors. It gets under your skin.
Yeah, it's like the landscape itself almost becomes a character, like it's mirroring all those anxieties of Claremont's citizens.
Exactly.
And speaking of which, that's where we meet Constance Dunn. She's our protagonist. We find her in Canton. She's a young woman. She works in her family's butcher shop. And what Boiteau does so well is he grounds her in this world. He gives us these incredibly vivid details, her daily routines, how she interacts with the townsfolk, even just her practicality, her level-headedness when it comes to these rumors about the Nilwere. He makes her relatable.
It's such a smart move because by making Constance so grounded, so normal, it just amplifies everything when she's forced to confront, the truly horrifying parts of Claremont. Because there's this very real sense that she's trapped, not only by, as we said, the societal expectations, the family structure, but by the landscape too. It's like the wilderness itself is this kind of prison, and it holds, the unknown, but also potentially the answers to what's plaguing Canton.
And then, of course, we have to talk about the Cinder.
Oh, yes.
This terrifying plague that's just ravaging Canton. Boiteau's descriptions, they're so vivid, so unsettling. The rotting flesh, the hair turning gray way before its time. It's a disease that attacks the body, that's clear. But there's also this underlying feeling that it's something deeper. It's like a manifestation of something rotten within Claremont itself.
Like a physical representation of their anxieties.
Exactly.
It's so clever how he does that. You mentioned Claremont as this post-revolution society, and you know what? I think he's using the Cinder to explore those anxieties that linger, that don't just disappear after a revolution ends, when the old order is gone, but the wounds, they haven't really healed. That's what the Cinder represents, I think, that unresolved trauma.
And right in the thick of it all is Constance. Her friend, Amity Lancaster, disappears, and Constance's search for her, it leads her to this imposing place called Erlewine Manor. This is the home of the enigmatic Count Erlewine. It's like stepping into this Gothic nightmare. You've got the grand manor, but oppressive, and then you've got these strange servants. The architecture seems to shift around you. It's like this constant feeling that something or someone is always watching.
It's where Boiteau's mastery of atmosphere really shines. He uses this Gothic setting, Erlewine Manor, to create this almost unbearable sense of claustrophobia and unease. So even though Constance is there looking for answers about Amity, about what happened to her friend, there's this growing feeling that she's the one who stumbled into a trap, that she's a pawn in some game she doesn't understand. And Count Erlewine, right, he seems benevolent, but there's something not quite right about him. It's like he offers Constance this refuge, but at what cost,
Especially when she starts to uncover these rituals. There's enchantments happening at the manor. It's clear Boiteau is not shying away from the ethics of power, right? He's asking us to question our own perceptions of authority, too. Like, where's the line between searching for knowledge and exploiting it, using it for your own gain?
Absolutely. And that's where, remember those fairy tale tropes we talked about earlier, they come back in full force here. Count Earlwine, with all his knowledge, his power, he could easily be seen as that classic helper figure, the one who's going to give Constance the key to fight the Cinder, to save her people. But there's this darkness to him, this manipulative streak that makes you think of, the darker side of those old fairy tales. The parts people don't like to admit are there. Boiteau's suggesting that transformation, real change, and often comes with a heavy price. And sometimes, confronting a monster, it's not a simple good versus evil situation. It's murkier than that. It makes you think.
It's that complexity that makes Constance's journey so captivating. She finds herself in a situation where good and evil, they're not so clear-cut. Power is this double-edged sword. She's searching for answers, right? About Amity, about the Cinder. But what she uncovers is, well, it's more like a web of secrets. It's a whole history, steeped in darkness and this growing feeling that she can't trust anyone, maybe not even Count Earlwine, as much as he seems to want to help.
It's like that theme of knowledge as a form of power, It becomes so central to everything happening. You see it with the Cinder. Nobody really knows what causes it, what to do about it. And the Nilwere, too. It's all whispers and rumors and half-truths. But nowhere is it more obvious than inside Earlwine Manor. There's this pervasive feeling that information is being kept from Constance, like she's only allowed to see these tiny pieces of a much bigger and probably much more sinister puzzle.
It's especially true when she finds that missing chapter in the Manor's library, the one about ancient curses.
Oh.
It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes. It shows how much control Earlwine has. He dangles these little bits of information in front of Constance, just enough to keep her searching, to keep her under his thumb.
Classic Gothic horror trope, right? The crumbling mansion with all its forbidden knowledge and this enigmatic figure hoarding secrets like they're precious treasures. But Boiteau, he adds this layer of, unsettling realism to it. He connects it to Constance's desire for knowledge, which is totally relatable. She just wants to save her people, to find a cure. She's not trying to unearth forbidden knowledge for power or anything. And I think that desperation, it's what makes her vulnerable to Earlwine's, manipulation.
And it's not just Earlwine she has to worry about. It's like the Manor itself is a threat. And what I find so effective is that Boiteau, he doesn't resort to cheap jump scares or gore, to make it scary. He builds this atmosphere of dread through subtle details. The Manor's layout seems to change. There's those eerie servants, and that constant feeling that something is watching her. It gets under your skin.
Oh, it's masterful. He takes what could be a cliche, right? The big Gothic manor, and he makes it truly terrifying.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's that grounding in reality that makes it so effective. Because Constance is so relatable, so normal, the weirdness of the manor becomes even more pronounced, more unsettling.
Absolutely. And then we have the escape. Now, without spoiling anything for our listeners, let's just say that Constance's time at Earlwine Manor, it ends with this desperate flight. She realizes that she's in way over her head, in more danger than she ever imagined. It's a turning point for her, I think. She goes from this practical, maybe even a little naive young woman to a true survivor. She has to fight not just for herself, but for a child that's been entrusted to her.
Talk about a baptism by fire, right? Constance has to face those literal dangers of the manor, but also these horrifying truths about the Cinder, about Count Earlwine, about how far people will go for power. It changes her. By the time she gets out of that manor, she's not the same Constance who went in. And she carries these heavy burdens, this knowledge that most people back in Canton probably wouldn't even believe.
You mentioned the weight of knowledge, and that's what gets me. Because when Constance escapes, it's not this happy homecoming. She goes back to Canton, but she's different. She has secrets now, and she's burdened by knowing that sometimes information alone, it's not enough to save everyone you love.
And that's what makes the Nilwere more than just a monster story. That's what makes it special. Boiteau, he uses the Nilwere, this creature, as a reflection of the darkness that's already inside Claremont. It's in the Cinder, in the way people fight for power, the fear, all the lies. Those are monsters, too. And those wounds, they cut just as deep as any physical ones, maybe even deeper.
And that's what makes Boiteau's writing so compelling, He's not afraid to explore those deeper themes. He could have just, written a straightforward monster story, creature feature, cool world, done. But with the Nilwere, it's like he's doing something much more interesting, much more unsettling. He uses these supernatural elements, but they're a way to talk about real anxieties, power, identity, that capacity we all have for good and for evil. It makes you think.
And the skill with which he does it, the way he brings all these pieces together, the Gothic horror, that historical setting, the societal anxieties, it all fits. It's a testament to him as a writer, you know?
Uh-huh.
He blends these genres, these tropes, but it never feels stale, never predictable.
And the atmosphere. Throughout the excerpts, it's incredible. The way Boiteau uses language, his descriptions, even the mundane stuff, it's so evocative. You can practically feel the chill in those woods, smell the decay of the cinder. You really get that sense of dread, those secrets of Erlewine Manor closing in on Constance.
Sensory details, that's his secret weapon.
Yeah.
He doesn't just tell you about the darkness, he drops you right into it. And you feel it. I mean, reading about some scary creature in the woods, that's one thing. But when Boiteau describes it, you feel that shiver down your spine, like the shadows themselves are alive, watching you, waiting.
It's like you said before about Constance's journey being this twisted fairy tale. I think that's spot on. That element of transformation, of facing something truly awful and coming out changed. But Boiteau, he kind of flips those fairy tale tropes on their head. It reminds you that happy endings, they're never easy. And sometimes battling those monsters, it leaves scars that go deeper than anything physical. They stay with you.
And that's the power of the Nilwere, isn't it? It's not just about the monsters we can see, the ones with claws and teeth. It's about the ones we create in our actions, what we choose to believe, our own fears. Boiteau, he doesn't give us any easy answers. He knows better than that. He leaves you with these questions, these lingering thoughts, this unease maybe, but also this deeper understanding of just how complex we are as humans.
So to all our listeners out there, if you're into dark fantasy, stories that make you think, make you uncomfortable in the best way possible, then Tim Boiteau, The Nilwere, that's your next read. Seriously, add it to your list.
It's one of those books that gets under your skin. You'll finish it, but you won't forget it. You'll find yourself thinking about power, about identity, about what it really takes to survive when the world isn't black and white, when those lines get blurry.
On that note, we'll leave you with this. What monsters are we creating in our own world, and are we willing to face them? Until next time, keep diving deep.